The monitor's cold, monotonous beep echoed through the white emergency observation room. The sharp smell of disinfectant filled the space, mixed with the sweat from a child's high fever. Cade sat on the hard plastic chair beside the bed, his lower back aching from staying still too long. He ignored his own exhaustion and pressed his fingers gently against his 7-year-old daughter Ella's burning forehead. The heat made his heart sink. Ella's thin hospital gown was damp with sweat on the back. Her long lashes fluttered rapidly, her brows furrowed, and her small body twitched slightly. Small, broken whimpers escaped her lips. Her temperature had dropped from 43 degrees Celsius to 39.7 degrees Celsius. But the inflammation wasn't under control. Her organs were under heavy strain. Any carelessness now could cause irreversible damage. Cade looked at his wife Layla beside him. His voice was hoarse from sleepless nights, his eyes bloodshot. Dark circles sat heavy under his eyes. He hadn't rested in over 30 hours. Layla nodded vaguely, but her eyes kept darting toward the closed ward door. She gripped her phone with both hands, unlocking and locking the screen mechanically. Ella's acute severe infection had started fast, just a mild cough and low fever at first. They thought it was a normal viral cold and treated it at home with medicine and physical cooling. Within one night, it worsened into a full-body severe inflammatory response. Her oxygen levels kept dropping. Her heart rate kept fluctuating. The ER team gave one solution: immediate transfer to the ICU for ventilator and organ support. Every ICU bed in the city was full. Flu season and severe lung cases had overwhelmed everything. Hallways were packed with desperate families waiting with no solutions. They used every connection they had, spent 8 hours coordinating, and secured the only pending ICU bed in the city. The hospital confirmed. Wait 2 hours. The current patient would transfer out, and Ella could go in. That bed was her only shot at local treatment with minimal risk. If they lost it, they'd have to transport her 100 kilometers away. High risk of respiratory arrest and organ failure on the way. Cade had built a medical emergency resource allocation platform himself. It coordinated with over a dozen public hospitals under a public health emergency agreement. The system was for mass casualties and large-scale disasters, rarely used for personal cases. Local ICU resources were completely drained. Multiple department heads confirmed no new pediatric ICU beds would open soon. Cade had all the transfer paperwork, test results, records, and medication logs printed and stacked on the bedside table. He knew every minute lost raised Ella's risk of death. Layla mumbled vague replies, avoiding his gaze and looking away from their feverish daughter. After years together, Cade caught her unusual evasiveness right away. She used to be steady in crises, but now she was visibly shaken and hiding something. Cade spoke calmly, sure she was holding back a secret. Layla stiffened for a moment, then quietly mentioned a comrade named Hayne who had saved her life during a rescue mission. Hayne's young son had pneumonia complications with acute respiratory distress, no ICU bed available anywhere, and he was dying. He had called Layla 4 times, begging her to help get his child a bed. Layla was torn. She couldn't forget Hayne saving her from a rockslide, and couldn't refuse him. Cade frowned and said directly that the ICU bed was Ella's. It was the only resource saving her life. Layla admitted she knew how critical Ella was, but couldn't let go of that life debt. Cade didn't want to argue in the room and disturb Ella, so he pulled Layla into the hallway. The hall was filled with muffled crying from other families, despair and helplessness everywhere. Layla leaned against the cold wall, biting her lip hard, her shoulders shaking. She admitted she had already completed the bed swap. She used her personal medical coordination account to submit the request, finished all approvals, and gave Ella's ICU bed to Haynes' son. The moment she said that, everything around them seemed to go silent. Cade stood frozen, his mind blank for a second. Shock hit him hard. Rage boiled in his chest. But when he looked through the glass at his unconscious daughter, he forced it down. He never imagined his wife of 7 years would bypass him and take away Ella's only local chance. No discussion, no heads up. She traded her daughter's life for personal debt. Cade's voice went low and cold, asking why she didn't consult him first. Layla said Hayne was pushing urgently, and she assumed Cade could use his higher-level access to find another bed. Cade pulled out his work terminal, logged into the main system, and pulled up the full bed change log. The operation account was registered to Layla. Login time, application, approvals, and effect time were all encrypted and unchangeable. His phone popped up an internal hospital notification. Haynes' son would be transferred to ICU room 3 within 10 minutes. All the evidence was solid, no room for denial. Cade looked through the double glass at Ella, unaware of everything. He pushed his anger aside and focused on the one thing that mattered: saving his daughter. Every minute delayed raised the risk of organ failure and death. He told Layla the priority now was treating Ella. Everything else could wait until she was stable. The bed change notification went out to all hospital terminals. Layla stood alone in the hallway, torn inside. She still thought repaying the debt was right, but Cade's cold distance made her uneasy for the first time. Cade didn't argue about morality anymore. He called the ICU emergency line at a partnered hospital in a neighboring city. Under the standard cooperation framework, he clearly stated the emergency: 7-year-old girl with severe infection. No ICU bed available locally. Full records, images, and real-time vitals would be sent immediately. He requested special approval for a pediatric ICU bed, the cross-city transport ambulance, 2 specialist nurses, and all life support equipment. He would pay everything out of pocket. No drain on the hospital's regular ICU resources. No impact on existing patients. The department head said temporary ICU bed approval was complicated, and transport risks were high. Cade promised to take full responsibility and signed a waiver releasing the hospital from liability. He begged them to start the emergency approval process. After reviewing Ella's records, the hospital applied for a temporary ICU bed and prepared monitoring equipment. Cade hung up and launched the full cross-city transport process. The emergency center dispatched the ambulance and staff. Layla went pale, finally realizing the city's ICU resources were completely exhausted. She feared the risks of the long transport, blood oxygen crashing, breathing stopping on the way. Cade laid out the risks clearly. Staying meant basic oxygen and monitoring at best. With organ failure and death imminent, transport had full life support equipment, dedicated nurses, real-time data relay, and remote doctor supervision. It was the only real option. The transport team rolled in a stretcher bed with sterile supplies and portable monitors, preparing for transfer. Ella, still in her fever delirium, frowned and mumbled, her small hands grabbing at the air. Cade knelt beside the bed, pressed his warm palm against her hot cheek, and spoke softly to calm her. The familiar warmth and voice made her tense limbs relax a little, her breathing evening out. Layla reached out to touch her daughter, but stopped before her fingers touched the gown. She had destroyed Ella's safe local treatment option. Guilt weighed heavy on her, but she still clung to the debt she owed Hayne. She whispered that if she had refused him, her conscience would haunt her forever. Cade's eyes were tired and cold. He said conscience should first protect your own family, and you can't repay a life debt with your daughter's life. He gave Layla 2 choices: come on the transport or stay. But from now on, she wouldn't have any say in Ella's medical decisions. Then he climbed into the ambulance, held Ella's damp, cold little hand, and gripped it tight. The ambulance siren sounded low and steady as the vehicle pulled away from the hospital. Layla stood alone in the empty hallway. Her phone buzzed, a message from Hayne, full of gratitude. The more sincere the words, the more her guilt cut deep. Comradeship and her daughter's safety kept wrestling inside her. At the out-of-town hospital's ICU waiting area, the smell of disinfectant lingered thick. Cold blue plastic chairs lined both sides, the polished floor throwing back a pale, cold reflection. Families walked by in silence, faces heavy with worry. Cade sat by the window, leaning against the cold wall, his tense nerves relaxing for the first time in hours. 2 hours after Ella was admitted, a nurse announced her fever had dropped to 38.2 degrees Celsius. Her heart rate and oxygen were back in safe ranges. Her lung strain relieved. She was out of immediate danger. But the infection wasn't fully controlled. She needed 72 hours of strict monitoring. Cade let out a long breath but didn't fully relax. If Layla could swap beds once based on personal ties, verbal promises wouldn't hold next time. Only solid, legally valid evidence could protect Ella's medical safety long-term. Cade called his family lawyer and laid out the whole story objectively. His spouse had used her system authority to unilaterally change their daughter's assigned ICU bed without the other guardian's consent. He asked the lawyer to bring a digital forensics team to secure the system logs, communications, and hospital notifications. All evidence would only be used for custody decisions and medical risk prevention, not released publicly. The lawyer told him to keep all original records and said they'd bring the equipment and sealed documents right away. 50 minutes later, Layla arrived at the ICU hallway via high-speed train. She looked exhausted, hair messy from travel. She immediately asked about Ella's condition. Kate told her Ella was out of the most critical phase but wasn't through the full observation period yet. He also said the lawyer and forensic team were coming to preserve all evidence. Layla got defensive. She said family conflicts shouldn't need lawyers and written records, which would permanently damage their relationship. Kate said private discussions only work when the other person doesn't trade their child's life for favors. Without legal safeguards, there'd be no way to protect Ella if another conflict between favors and her safety came up. Layla said she had already learned a hard lesson. Seeing her daughter risked in transport was enough. Kate repeated that the goal was to create an unbreakable protection barrier for their child, not just punish her. The lawyer and 2 technicians arrived with recording gear, encrypted hard drives, seals, and statement forms. With both parties' consent, they accessed their work accounts on site, recording everything. All system logs were fully exported, login times, application nodes, effect records permanently encrypted and unchangeable, hospital notifications and all chats, calls, and voice records between Layla and Hayne were backed up too. Each piece of evidence was displayed and archived. Layla stood there, feeling a mix of shame, guilt, and regret. The facts were undeniable, and it hurt to see her mistakes sealed in black and white forever. After the data was secured, the lawyer reviewed the complete file and gave a professional assessment. The evidence chain was complete. Layla had made the bed change independently, without notifying the other guardian. The file was sealed and stored, only accessible in court cases, with both children's privacy strictly protected. The technicians packed up and left, leaving Cade and Layla alone in the hallway. Layla walked to the ICU glass and looked at Ella, covered in tubes and wires, sleeping. Her guilt surged. Even with all the evidence on file, she still couldn't fully deny her original intention to repay a debt. The rift between them was now objective and complete. The moment she swapped that bed, years of trust and understanding had cracked beyond repair. 3 days after the evidence was secured, an online storm broke, all public anger aimed at Hayne. Hayne knew he was in the wrong for taking a child's ICU bed. To reduce pressure on himself, he leaked a fragmented version of the story. He hid that the bed was originally for Layla's 7-year-old daughter, and played up his own son's critical condition and his life debt narrative. That one-sided story spread fast through local forums, social media, and WeChat groups. Many users, not knowing the full story, directed outrage at Cade. They said he was cold and heartless for hoarding medical resources and not appreciating life-saving comradeship. Wild speculation spread. People claimed Cade was manufacturing conflict to suppress his wife and fight for custody. Layla scrolled through social media and saw the comments. Her face went pale. She felt helpless and exhausted. Cade had just finished talking with the ICU doctor about Ella's latest results. Her inflammation markers were steadily improving. He saw Layla's downcast mood and called it out directly. Hayne had intentionally spread a distorted story, and the online narrative was completely off from the truth. Layla admitted she had asked Hayne to stop talking about it publicly, but he insisted his debt took priority and couldn't see any other way. Cade worried the ongoing online chaos would drag Ella into the fight even while she was still in the ICU. Layla said if they released the full system logs for a clear rebuttal, Hayne's young son would face massive online harassment. Both children were innocent victims. They shouldn't suffer because of adult selfishness and avoidance. Cade spent 4 hours with his lawyer crafting a calm, objective official statement. No emotional accusations, just a clear timeline of the bed change and Ella's cross-city treatment situation. It emphasized that Hayne's son was blameless and firmly opposed dragging minors into adult internet disputes. It included privacy-redacted timeline details, hiding both children's names, ages, and treatment info. No full original records released. After the statement went out, public opinion split into 2 camps. Some read the full story and changed their stance, discussing the line between personal debts and bottom-line principles. Others stuck to the emotional story and kept arguing, without the raw, hard evidence posted publicly. The rumor spread slowed. No one-sided harassment wave formed. Late at night, during visiting hours, the hallway lights were dimmed. Cade and Layla stood side by side, looking at Ella through the glass. Thousands of people were fighting online, but their little girl knew nothing, quietly receiving treatment. Layla whispered that her original goal of repaying a debt had ended in a mess no one could control. Kate said debts are worth remembering. But the way she repaid it was fundamentally wrong. Adult conflicts should be judged by hospitals and courts, not left to online crowds for their entertainment. Online noise didn't fully fade in the next few days. But Cade held his line. He kept both children out of the public attack. Because the unauthorized bed swap involved public officials abusing scheduling authority and misusing scarce ICU resources, the Higher Medical Administration started a formal hearing at the hospital's administrative building. A stenographer was present, and the entire session was recorded with audio and video. Participants included medical inspectors, hospital management, Hayne, Layla, and Cade. Ella was still in the ICU in the other city, too weak to travel, so her records were submitted as documents. Hayne's son had been taken off the ventilator and moved to a regular pediatric ward to recover. At the hearing, Hayne spoke first and tried to deflect blame, claiming he had no idea the bed belonged to Layla's daughter. He said he only asked her to help find an available bed, and would never have accepted the swap if he had known. Layla heard his excuses and her long-held comradeship broke down completely. During their earlier conversations, she had clearly told Hayne she had to sacrifice her daughter's bed. He knew the whole time. Layla's voice tensed up as she called out his lies. Hayne countered, falsely claiming Layla only said there was an empty bed available, not whose it was. The lead inspector tapped the table and demanded the original communication records as evidence. Staff projected the redacted full chat history, plain text showing Layla clearly stated the cost, and Hayne agreed to save his son first. With the evidence laid out, the room fell silent. Hayne's face turned pale, then flushed. He couldn't pretend innocence anymore. He weakly argued that he was too worried about his child at the time and didn't read the messages carefully. Cade sat through it all silently. No emotional outbursts. He clearly saw that Hayne's life debt had been a knot Layla carried for years. Now Hayne threw her under the bus to save himself, shattering whatever trust she had left. Layla looked Hayne straight in the eyes and said she still honored the debt she owed, but you couldn't pay it with a 7-year-old's life. She admitted she once naively thought he understood the weight of the choice. Now she saw the truth. Hayne avoided her gaze and mumbled he had no other treatment options. Layla said having no choice didn't justify taking another child's chance at life. She openly admitted her own mistake, blinded by comradeship. She misused her scheduling authority, and would accept any workplace punishment. She also said she would no longer cover for Hayne. Right and wrong would be decided by the rules. The administrators deliberated for 40 minutes behind closed doors. They issued a formal written decision with an official stamp. Layla had violated medical coordination system rules, given a demerit, removed from ICU scheduling, and barred from promotion for 3 years. Hayne knowingly took a pediatric ICU bed and later stoked one-sided public opinion, given a system-wide reprimand and negative mark on his annual performance record. The custody dispute was not under the hearing's jurisdiction. The full evidence set was forwarded to family court. Everyone signed the decision and left the room one by one. Only Cade and Layla remained in the meeting room. The daylight outside was dull. Layla's emotional foundation had collapsed. She was filled with regret. She admitted she had been lying to herself, thinking there was no cost too high for repaying a debt. Only after the hearing did she realize she had chosen the wrong way from the start. Family court custody hearing. All documents, the hearing decision, system logs, full chat backups, and Ella's transport ICU records, were bound and submitted to the family court. The file contained only objective facts. No emotional language. The hearing officially opened. Judge, clerk, both parties, and their lawyers present. Layla admitted in court she had made a serious judgment error, putting comradeship above her daughter's safety, and she deeply regretted it. She sincerely expressed her love for Ella and asked the court to keep her visitation rights. Her lawyer argued she had no malicious intent, just poor judgment from personal relationships, and asked for some custodial rights to remain. Cade presented his claims clearly and calmly in court. He didn't deny Layla's real love for Ella, but he couldn't trust that she would protect Ella first if another favor conflict came up. His daughter had just survived a life-threatening crisis. He couldn't risk her future on verbal promises. He requested sole primary custody of Ella, with full independent decision-making authority over all medical care, surgeries, and rehabilitation. Layla would have supervised visitation, must report time and place 24 hours in advance in writing. No unauthorized taking the child away. No interference in any treatment or recovery plans. The judge called the out-of-town hospital's attending doctor as a remote witness. The doctor objectively described Ella's condition. Inflammation was gradually improving, but the severe illness and transport had made her emotionally sensitive and timid. Even small arguments scared her. Stable, conflict-free environment was best for her recovery and mental health, shielding her from adult disputes. After 2 rounds of lawyer negotiations, Layla understood the evidence and law were both against her. Her mistakes were undeniable. She had no chance of winning joint custody. After 15 minutes of deliberation, the judge read the final ruling in open court. First, Ella's primary legal custody goes to Cade, with all medical decisions solely his. Second, Layla has weekly visitation, must pre-schedule and confirm, cannot interfere with the child's treatment. Third, marital assets are not divided in this session, can be addressed separately later. Fourth, 70% of litigation and evidence collection costs to be paid by Layla. 3 copies of the ruling were distributed, black and white, binding and enforceable. Walking out of the courthouse, the streets were busy. They walked in silence, cold and isolated. Layla clutched the ruling, her fingers turning white. No breakdown, just a quiet, lingering sadness. She fully accepted the outcome. She knew it was all because of her own mistake. She regretted not being able to make decisions about her daughter's care anymore. Cade told Layla her visitation rights were intact. She was still Ella's mother. She could be there for daily life. But life or death medical choices weren't hers to make. Layla said she fully understood the rules. She would follow every one strictly. Her love was real. But the judgment error that risked her child's life was too severe. The law prioritizes the minor's safety first. After the custody ruling, Ella was still recovering at the out-of-town hospital. They began adjusting to this new legally defined relationship. After Ella moved to a regular recovery ward, she improved steadily each day, fever completely gone, eating on her own, moving around a little. But after her illness, she had become quiet and fearful. Even small sounds startled her. Cade stayed with her during the day and reviewed his medical resource platform's design flaws at night after she fell asleep. The crisis exposed a core gap. It had only focused on disaster response efficiency, and the approval process was too simplified. Staff with scheduling authority could bypass the other guardian and unilaterally change a minor's ICU bed with just their own account. No mandatory 2-person review or dual authorization. Personal connections easily exploited the process and endangered children's lives. Cade organized a closed-door workshop with platform developers, hospital medical directors, ICU head nurses, and medical inspectors. The redacted bed swap case was used as the core example. The goal was to fix the system, not assign blame. Cade projected the old bed change workflow and broke down each design flaw. New rule: any routine pediatric ICU bed change requires electronic confirmation from all legal guardians. Without all approvals, the system automatically rejects the request. A medical director raised a practical concern. In extreme emergencies where guardians can't be reached, dual authorization could delay critical care. Cade added an emergency override switch, only for life-threatening situations like respiratory arrest or multi-organ failure. When triggered, the system generates the highest-level encrypted audit log with full operation details. The operator must submit a complete medical report and written explanation to the inspector within 72 hours for review. Except for emergency overrides, all standard bed changes require mandatory dual guardian verification. The tech lead noted additional features. Real-time alert push for high-risk operations. Any application to change an ICU or pediatric ICU bed triggers an immediate SMS, and app notification to all guardians before approval is even completed. Access levels are also adjusted. Regular medical accounts permanently lose the ability to change assigned patient beds. They can only submit vacancy requests pending multi-level supervisor reviews. All high-risk pediatric ICU operation logs are encrypted and stored forever, available anytime for inspector review, with a minimum 15-year retention period. Everyone at the meeting refined the rules point by point and ran through different clinical scenarios, embedding child life protection as a hard bottom-line rule. Midway through, a nurse called to say Ella was awake and asking for her dad. Cade paused the meeting and went back to the ward. Afternoon sunlight filled the room. Ella propped against the bed with a healthy flush on her cheeks. She reached out her little hand, her eyes lighting up. Ella asked when they could go home. Cade gently told her the truth. Once all rechecks passed, they could be discharged. Ella quietly asked if Mom would come home too. Cade didn't lie or badmouth Layla, he gave a calm, factual explanation. Mom loves her deeply and would visit every weekend. But something serious had happened, so they couldn't live together anymore. Ella looked down, not fully understanding but sensing something was broken. Cade told her to rest and went back to finish the platform upgrade plan. They scheduled 3 rollouts over 3 months across all partner hospitals, with full staff training. Human choices, selfishness, and kindness can't be controlled by code, but solid rules can build a safety net and reduce the harm done to innocent kids by adult decisions. After 2 full months of recovery, Ella's blood work and lung imaging were all back to normal. She was discharged and went home with Cade. Everything in the house, her toys, books, things, was still in place. It all felt the same. Except Layla wasn't there anymore. Following the court ruling, Layla visited every weekend. They'd confirm the time and plan online the day before. She wasn't allowed to change any of Ella's checkups, rehab, or treatment schedule. Saturday afternoon the doorbell rang. Cade opened it, and Layla stood there with new picture books, snacks, and a stuffed toy in her hands. Her demerit was officially on record. She'd been permanently moved off scheduling and was doing basic clerical medical work. After the hearing and custody battle, her obsession with repaying her debt was gone. She was quieter, more reflective. Cade stepped aside and told her Ella was playing with blocks in the living room. Ella heard her mom's voice, put down the blocks, and ran over. Her hug was soft and light since she was still building strength. They sat on the carpet looking at picture books. Layla only talked about light, happy things, never mentioning the bed swap, the hearings, or the lawsuit. Cade went into his study to check the platform's new version operation report. The dual guardian verification was fully rolled out citywide. 17 requests to change pediatric ICU beds had been auto-blocked in the past 2 months due to missing authorization. The new rules were working. Sunlight faded. Visiting hours were almost over. Ella tugged Layla's sleeve, asking her to stay the night. Layla gently said she'd come earlier next week with a puzzle and spend the full day, then left on time. After Layla left, the house went quiet. Ella played with her blocks alone for a long time, then asked Cade a question. She asked if her mom had made a big, unfixable mistake. Cade sat beside her and gave an honest, unemotional answer. Yes, Mom did something that almost cost her treatment, but her love is real. Adults make mistakes too, and when they do, they have to face the consequences. That's the rule for everyone. Ella asked if they could ever live together like before. Cade shook his head gently. Some damage can't be undone. But she would always have 2 parents who loved her completely and truly. Ella nodded, not fully grasping it, then went back to her blocks. Outside the building, the evening wind brushed Layla's face. She had already cut off deep personal ties with Hayne, keeping only basic work communication. His son had recovered fully, but the way Hayne had deflected blame at the hearing had broken whatever loyalty she still felt. Trust would never come back. Layla had learned the bottom line clearly. Life debts should always be honored, but there are countless ways to repay without hurting others, and no debt should ever outweigh an innocent child's life. That was a lesson carved into her heart by her daughter's near-fatal ordeal. She stopped dwelling on self-pity or regret. She focused on her clerical work and weekly visits, showing her love within the clear legal boundaries.